I know that a lot of people believe whatever because they don't understand and they don't know.
The rise, fall, and resurrection of Andre Rieu. Andre Rieu seemed to have everything: a fortune that rivaled rock legends, castles that once housed kings, and sold-out arenas filled with thunderous applause. But behind the glittering lights, lavish costumes, and waltzing crowds was a story no one ever saw coming, one built on impossible ambition, heartbreaking risks, and a dream that almost cost him everything. From humble beginnings, Andre built an empire worth over $40 million, a fortune earned not through pop or rock, but through classical waltzes, a feat so rare that even today's biggest stars can hardly match it. Yet the very success that brought him unimaginable wealth would one day bring tears to his family's eyes, because behind every standing ovation was a price paid in silence, sacrifice, and sleepless nights. Andre's journey began in Maastricht, the Netherlands. He wasn't born into luxury, just a boy surrounded by music. His father, the conductor of the Maastricht Symphony Orchestra, filled their home with symphonies and sonatas. But young Andre wasn't content with polite applause in dimly lit halls. He wanted something grander, music that moved people to dance, laugh, and celebrate life. He dreamed of turning classical music into a shared joy, not a distant art form. In 1987, that dream took form. Andre took a daring leap and founded the Johann Strauss Orchestra, not a small chamber group but a full-blown musical spectacle. What started with just 12 musicians quickly exploded into an orchestra of over 60, with performers from across the world. Andre didn't just play Strauss, he reimagined him. His concerts were filled with energy, emotion, and even humor. One night it was the Blue Danube, the next it was the Macarena. The blend worked beautifully. Crowds adored him. Soon Andre wasn't just filling theaters, he was selling out entire stadiums. By the early 2000s, he was outpacing musical giants like AC/DC, Bruce Springsteen, and Coldplay in ticket sales. His shows earned millions per night, his DVDs sold by the millions, and fans traveled from every corner of the globe just to witness the magic of Andre Rieu and his orchestra in person. The Waltz King had officially become a superstar. Money flowed in faster than ever before, but Andre wasn't a man to let success sit idle. Every dollar he earned went back into creating an even grander experience for his audience. Bigger stages, more musicians, more magic. Then came 2008, the year the dream nearly turned into a disaster. That year, Andre decided to stage what he called his most ambitious concert yet, a breathtaking recreation of Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna, built entirely from scratch. The set was pure fantasy: glittering fountains, golden statues, real ice rinks, ornate carriages, and dancers in royal gowns. The cost? A staggering $30 million. For a moment it was everything Andre had ever envisioned, a musical fairy tale brought to life. But the fantasy came with a devastating price tag. The massive expense pushed him to the brink of bankruptcy, threatening to wipe out decades of work overnight. The very empire he'd spent his life building was suddenly crumbling under its own grandeur. Andre sat down with his bankers, facing the grim reality that he might lose it all: his homes, his instruments, even his orchestra. For a man who had made the world dance, the silence of failure was deafening. But Andre Rieu was not the kind to surrender. Slowly, concert by concert, he fought his way back. He trimmed costs, rebuilt his finances, and refused to give up on his dream. Every show became a step toward redemption. Within a few years, he had not only paid off his debts, he had made his empire even stronger than before. He adapted to the modern world by expanding his concerts into global cinema events, streaming performances in theaters across continents. Fans who couldn't travel to see him live now filled cinemas, paying premium prices to experience the spectacle on the big screen. It was a brilliant move, one that made him millions more and restored his fortune to even greater heights. By 2023, Andre Rieu was once again on top of the world, his wealth soaring past $40 million, his name synonymous with musical joy. But what made his story truly remarkable wasn't just the comeback, it was the resilience behind it. Andre had stared down ruin, rebuilt his empire from the ashes, and proved that the true measure of success isn't found in gold or glory, but in the music that keeps playing long after the lights go out. Andre Rieu's success was never a solo act. Behind every curtain call, every standing ovation, and every breathtaking waltz stood the quiet strength of his family, the ones who built the dream with him and carried its weight when the applause faded. At the heart of it all was Marjorie Rieu, his wife since 1975. More than a partner, she was the mind behind the magic, designing costumes, choosing venues, and shaping the grand productions that made André's concerts feel like royal galas. Every shimmering gown, every perfectly lit stage, carried her fingerprints. She wasn't just married to André, she was woven into the fabric of his empire. Together, they transformed classical concerts into family-run masterpieces. Their son, Pierre Rieu, soon stepped into the spotlight as well, not as a performer, but as a visionary. He became vice president of André Rieu Productions, overseeing logistics, tours, and marketing, ensuring the orchestra ran like a well-tuned instrument. It wasn't just a business anymore, it was a dynasty, a musical kingdom built on love, trust, and relentless dedication. But behind the glamour of their empire was an unspoken truth. It all depended on André himself. Every note, every tour, every paycheck was tied to his health, his energy, and his ability to perform. That fragile balance came crashing down in 2010, when a severe ear infection forced him to cancel months of concerts. Fans were heartbroken, but for André's family it was terrifying. They suddenly saw how vulnerable everything was. One illness, one canceled tour, and the empire could crumble overnight. The financial pressure was enormous, but the emotional strain was even greater. Still, André refused to slow down. Once he recovered, he threw himself back into work, performing across continents, determined to keep the music alive. Even at home, surrounded by luxury, André's life was anything but quiet. He and Marjorie lived in Castle de Wick, a breathtaking estate in Maastricht built in 1452, a place steeped in legend. It was once the setting of the final meal of Charles de Batz de Castelmore d'Artagnan, the real-life inspiration for the Three Musketeers. As a boy, André had visited the castle for piano lessons. Back then, it was dark, damp, and crumbling, hardly the place of dreams. But decades later, he returned as its owner, pouring millions into restoring it to its former glory. Today, its glittering chandeliers, marble floors, and manicured gardens look like something straight out of a fairy tale. Except this wasn't fiction. André was living inside the story he'd written for himself. His home became a reflection of who he was: grand, passionate, a little old-fashioned, and deeply sentimental. Among the castle's treasures sat some of his most prized possessions, his Stradivarius violins. Each one was a masterpiece, centuries old, handcrafted by the legendary Antonio Stradivari himself. The jewel of his collection was a 1,692 Stradivarius he purchased for nearly £7 million in 2018, his third one. Few musicians ever touch such an instrument, let alone own three. Every violin told a story, and André played them not as antiques, but as living extensions of his soul. His perfectionism didn't stop there. André personally designed the elaborate gowns his female musicians wore, creations inspired by Austrian royalty and costing around £3,000 each. Multiply that by dozens of performers on every tour, and it became clear why even one failed show could spark a financial crisis. Every concert was a gamble, an all-or-nothing performance where beauty came at a breathtaking cost. Still, André believed in giving the audience nothing less than magic. That belief was what nearly bankrupted him during his legendary Vienna Schönbrunn concerts, when he spent £34 million recreating the palace set, not once, but 3 times for his global tour. The scale was staggering, the risk even greater. When the financial fallout hit, André found himself sitting across from his bank manager discussing what assets could be sold to pay his debts. It was a moment that could have broken anyone, but not André Rieu. He rose again, stronger and smarter, because for him, music wasn't just a career, it was a calling. At home, things appeared peaceful, a castle filled with laughter, fine dinners, and family gatherings. But even those dinners often doubled as board meetings. The family business never slept. Marjorie still wrote the scripts for André's concerts, crafting the emotional stories that connected music to memory. Pierre managed the growing production empire. Together, they kept the dream alive, but it came with constant pressure. Every show was high stakes, every decision monumental. André's family supported him fiercely, but they also worried. They saw the exhaustion behind his smile, the endless tours, and the fear of losing everything he'd built. Yet, despite the burden, Andre never stopped believing that joy was worth the risk. His mission wasn't just to make people listen, it was to make them feel. It was never just a business, it was a family, his second family, one that journeyed together across continents, assembling and dismantling colossal stages in arenas from Mexico City to Sydney. Every city demanded 9 massive trucks loaded with lights, costumes, instruments, props, and sound gear. The crew worked tirelessly, building the stage from the ground up by dawn and packing it all away long after midnight, once the 3-hour spectacle had ended. To the audience, each performance was pure magic, but behind that illusion was grueling, disciplined labor. Andre ran his tours like a finely tuned orchestra, no rock star chaos, no indulgent after-parties. His team even traveled with personal chefs to ensure everyone ate healthy meals. Andre himself rested before every concert, understanding that a single exhausted night or a lackluster show could cost him his reputation and millions in revenue. After each performance, he gathered his musicians for small celebrations, not wild champagne toasts, but evenings of good wine, laughter, and camaraderie. To Andre, this wasn't merely work. It was his calling, his life's true passion. That relentless commitment paid off spectacularly. Even in an age ruled by streaming and digital media, Andre's album sales defied the odds. His long-standing partnership with Universal Music, spanning over 2 decades, produced astonishing results. In just 20 years, he sold more than 40 million albums worldwide, a feat typically reserved for pop superstars, not classical violinists. And while many declared DVDs obsolete, Andre's fans proved otherwise. They bought millions each year, especially his beloved recordings from the legendary Maastricht summer concerts. Each performance was filmed, meticulously edited, and released to eager fans who cherished having something tangible, something real, to hold in their hands. Andre wasn't only a brilliant musician, he was a showman who instinctively understood his audience. He released themed albums such as his movie themes collection, featuring timeless hits like My Heart Will Go On. He admitted he rarely wrote original compositions, preferring instead to reinvent classics that people already loved, infusing them with his unique emotion and flair. It was a formula that never failed. Every release became a bestseller, fueling his empire and ensuring that every member of his orchestra and crew was paid on time, every month. But maintaining success on such a grand scale came with immense pressure. Without sponsors or patrons to rely on, every tour, every recording was a gamble, and slowing down was never an option. Even during the global pandemic, when live concerts came to a standstill, Andre found ways to stay connected. He spent his time baking cakes for neighbors, lifting spirits in his community, and quietly planning for the future. Out of that quiet period came one of his boldest ideas yet, a global cinema event celebrating his 75th birthday in 2025, titled The Dream Continues. The film featured never-before-seen performances from his worldwide tours, projected on screens across the globe, a grand tribute to his extraordinary journey. From a dream-filled boy in Maastricht to a global icon adored by millions, Andre's success has always rested on the same 3 pillars: hard work, discipline, and fearless risk-taking. His Jewish father-in-law, Edgar Kram, also played a crucial role. His vast collection of 300 vinyl records introduced Andre to a world of music he had never known. Those influences shaped his distinctive style, making classical music accessible to millions who never thought they'd love it. Pieces like Hava Nagila, a Jewish klezmer tune, became instant sensations at his concerts. His rendition of it on YouTube alone has drawn over 14 million views. Andre even performed in Israel, where audiences rose to their feet as he played beloved national songs like Jerusalem of Gold. Yet despite his monumental fame, Andre never forgot where he came from. When he turned 75, he marked the milestone in grand style, with a spectacular boat parade through his hometown of Maastricht, joined by his entire orchestra. Fans around the world tuned in through cinema screenings, reliving decades of unforgettable performances. In the end, Andre Rieu achieved what many deemed impossible: a vast private orchestra, worldwide acclaim, and a fortune built on passion, precision, and faith in beauty itself. It was more than success. It was a legacy.